Recently been quite interested about the near-death experiences of different people. This is on the piano, and because yeah, what happens after death, and like after my dad passed away, it's like when someone goes, um, the grief therapist told me, the relationship still continues, and it still continues to evolve, and you say like, how can that happen? Well, it's because as you grow, your perception of like life and the relationship can change. So it's constantly changing in that way. So it's still alive. And let me, I put light, but it's a bit harsh in my eyes. But also my dad, he really liked driving. So I would try to like kind of talk to him, or the idea of him things are falling. Um, as I was driving in, so I'd imagine that he was sitting, or his presence, like sitting beside me. And I think the wonderful thing, I did I did go see a medium, um, and I might lose some people in that statement, but I think, maybe I just spent too much time on YouTube. Um, but I think like maybe there's a reason why stories like Harry Potter and like stories that have to do with some sort of magic um, can resonate with some of us, and maybe it's because there's something in us that is like, yeah, there is something more than the reality of like what meets the eyes. Like I remember growing up, there was this thing where people could say like, oh, but my words said this, yeah, but the feeling was very different. And how can we make that distinction if we're just flesh and bone, and if we're just like living in a very real world, and but we can still pick up on like the feeling of things. So like I always thought that there was this disconnect when I was growing up of maybe what I said and what I really felt, because I felt the pressure that I had to behave a certain way. I had to say the certain right thing in order to be correct in like society, in the group of people. Um, and so I grew up very disconnected with my reality, like what being authentic is. And I think, I haven't really. I'm only on chapter 3. They're very short chapters, but I did watch a talk with the author, well, one of the authors, but the guy who went through the story, because there's another guy who helped him write it. I believe male. Actually, I don't know. And there's 10 things that the guide. So he like dies, and he spends some time in another dimension, and um I watched it in the podcast of, so like the breakdown podcast. And oh, where is it? Yeah. So the first one is be authentic. And yeah, I guess I haven't gotten to that part, but that for me has been such a huge learning curve, because I remember in finding the partner that I'm so happy that I get to be with, and really is one of those things that, some people were like, "Oh, would you get like maybe," I don't know, like I think that you get, at least where I am at, is like every day, you keep discovering life with this person. Um and it's not just, like what, do you know what I mean? Like I just thought, well, this is richer than any experience I could have ever imagined being in a romantic relationship could be like. It's definitely not something how I would have pictured it. And I think that's a funny thing. Maybe I tried to be too much in control of everything, whereas life, maybe the gifts come in ways that would be outside of what I would perceive. But yeah, so with the way that I was able to arrive to this beautiful relationship was precisely by being authentic, because it's that thing of, I don't want to change myself into something else that I deem would be the most appropriate version of myself with like my brain, because the brain would scan society, whether it's like social media or the media or whomever you see around you, and think, okay, so these are the traits that someone would find more attractive or better, and try to change myself. Ooh, there's some glass figurines that I definitely don't want to hurt. Okay, so once you think, no, you know, I'm, whether it's enough or I'm worthy of love or I am lovable and I'm loving, and you know, and I'm not gonna change myself, because I felt like when I tried to be something that I wasn't, I would attract someone that would love that idea of me, but that wouldn't be me. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't be doing them any favors, because I'd be falling in love with something that's not real. And I wouldn't be happy, because that wouldn't be me authentically. And when I, broke that old relationship, and well, I mean, it was already dead for a very long time. But when we finally called it quits, I was able to fully, and show up authentically. And also when I met my partner, I also was brave enough to be unapologetic, to be like, this is just me. I think it was really helpful that neither of us were looking to be with a romantic partner, because see, I'm bisexual, and one of the cool things that I found when I was dating a girl was that there's no guidebook. Like, I always felt growing up in Peru and like watching American TVs and movies, um, there was kind of like this rule book of like, maybe there's like this like 3 dates and then don't text back too soon, and it's so guarded and shoulds and should nots, and then you have, your group of friends that are advising you, and it was so hard, or I don't know if the word is convoluted. Sometimes I say words that I'm not 100% sure that's what it is. But when dating a woman, it's kind of like all that evaporated. For good or for bad, or it just did. It wasn't like you should, if you're two of the same gender, like, who buys the drink, or who invites the other person, who picks up the tab, or do you split it, and suddenly it was so, I think, joyful and playful to not have this kind of rigid structure that I thought to have. And so I really like was like, whoa, that's the, it's the thing. And with my current partner, he's male, so but because of the way we met up, that we didn't intend to form a relationship. So it was, I think that also helped us to just show up authentically, because we weren't trying to like enamor the other person. We were just like showing up as ourselves. And I think that also allowed us to really truly, at least personally, to show up authentically. And that means that I think you kind of cut to the chase in many ways. I think. And then I was reading this other book that I haven't finished. It's a bit tougher. I sometimes feel like the author can make sweeping statements. Like, everyone feels this way. And it's like, well, yeah, can never say everyone, because um or everyone wants to breathe. But there are things, or maybe not everyone. See, that's what I'm trying to say. So I really don't like that. And sometimes I feel like I'm a bit hesitant for people that make judgments on how to raise children. If it's kind of like this author, I mean, it has amazing, very, very, amazing ideas. But sometimes, like, it's always kind of the thing of like, I see friends of mine who are now having kids, and they're like, oh wow, now I go back to my mom and say like, oh my gosh, thank you so much, I had no idea. So not to say that all mothers are good parents, but sometimes I feel like it's better to have the experience before talking about it. But here I am, maybe sharing my opinions when maybe I'm not like an expert in every subject. But at least I think I'm trying to speak from my personal lived experience. Um, and But this book was saying how it actually quoted another book about the definition of love. So it says the Peck's classic self-help book, The Road Less Traveled, first published in 1978, echoing the works of Erich Fromm. He defines love as the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. And says, like, love is an act of will, an intention, and an action. Will also implies choice, like we choose to love. And furthermore, what the author Bell Hooks explains is that, you on one hand, you can have, and I guess anybody can, that has been a child with parents with that dynamic, can have an opinion about it because you've been a child. At least you can see it from that experience. So I guess, yeah. Sorry, maybe I don't want to offend the other, because obviously it's a really like well thought out book, and it's so like thorough, and it goes into so many different parts. But mentioning how with parenthood, Bell Hooks mentions how you can have someone who is like neglectful as a parent, or abusive. So you can have someone who's like too controlling or just hurls like insults and stuff like that. And so that's abusive. And you can also have care in that relationship. So it's a dysfunctional situation where, but they still make your food, they still like wash your clothes, they're still like, as a parent, they do all these things that you're cared for, and that could be the definition of love. But there also are ways in which, they throw insults and stuff, and so it's kind of like this mixed bag of, like, as a kid maybe you grow up confused as to what really love is, and maybe you look for then partners that may be there, but maybe emotionally they're not like fully there. So anyway, that's what the book in some ways goes into. And then I thought what I thought was really interesting was the other side of the spectrum as well. If you have a parent that's too permissive and maybe just buys them everything and allows them to do absolutely everything, um, and that can be also a form of neglect. And I thought that was really, really interesting, because it is the action of like nurturing someone's spiritual growth, right? So both in the relationship, in myself and my relationship to myself, well, what does my spiritual growth mean? Like, oh, maybe I do feel the need to go for a walk, and maybe going for a walk in nature doesn't have a specific reason for that, except I'm following my intuition and it makes me feel better. And maybe that is good enough. And I am good enough to follow my needs instead of having to have like an ulterior like motive of productivity. Although, of course, when we do feel better, we end up also being more productive, which is so funny. I think for so long I was just like work, 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 and then I just like you just burn out because you're not a machine, and even machine have down times, right? You still need to stop the machine, you still clean the machine, you oil the machine, order new parts sometimes. So so we can extend care. Um, and yeah, and so the other side was like, if you're in a relationship, that whatever relationship, that you're supporting spiritual growth. So you're not just like, you're also there to share and help the other person. It's not about dictating, but obviously like an open communication of like, what does that person want to do? How can I help you achieve maybe what you want to do and stuff like that? And so I love that. I love the definition about love. Is I think one of the interesting reflections of the book is how society talks so much about love, but not so much how to go about the love. I think nowadays with social media, there's a lot more information on what are maybe some toxic or helpful ways of loving. But this book was, I think it was in the early 2000s that it was released. Yeah, 2001. I was first published in 2000. So yeah, the world was totally a different place back then. But I'm excited as well to continue reading this book. And then oh, and then I also read this book. A Hymn to Life by Giselle Pellico, and I think it's just amazing. I mean, it's such a it's hard to put down as a book, and it's just so well written. Um, Please do look it up before starting to read because it has like a big, I guess, trigger warning. But maybe you already know about the trial. To say the least, I didn't know how to explain it. But it is incredibly well written because it talks about so many things. It talks about the incident when she found out, going to the police station, and then the goes into the beginnings of the loving, of the relationship she had with her husband when they first met and when they first fell in love, and trying to piece back the life and going back to different moments and see were there any signs of the horror that would unfold, you know. And I think that's I think I felt a bit like it mirrors what people go through. Like when something really bad happens to you, you do, you go through this moment of shock or whatever, but she's so strong as well, but also she was kind of forced into it, because it was like, you know. But so I'm not it's not commenting about this person's experience, because I think the book is so well done. So I would, if you feel compelled to, if you feel called to read it, like don't hesitate, run to get it. And but for me, yeah, it was like when I went through something, I just felt so disconnected, like from life, and and I wanted to dress like in really baggy clothes and disappear. I wanted to never be seen. I wanted to appear also like a boy, so that I disappear from the male gaze. So I think I wasn't aware of the extent of that action, that the impact that it had in my life. I need to go. Oh shoot.